So you're ready to make pizza. I'll tell you how I make it, and then you might be able to adjust a little bit, like if you don't have a food processor, because I use a food processor. So you would dissolve 1 packet of regular active dry yeast. There's something called quick yeast. You don't want the quick yeast, you want the active dry yeast. Comes in packets in the baking aisle. Red Star is one of the brands. They're all about the same, and there's 3 packets that you buy at once. Just use 1 packet in about 3/4 of a cup of pretty warm water. It should be comfortable enough that you can put your hands in and not feel like you have to, yank them out. Kind of warm to the wrist, I guess, kind of like a baby bottle, maybe a little warmer. So you're gonna sprinkle the yeast over the warm water, and then while you do that, you're gonna put about 3.5 cups of flour in a bowl. You're going to take some olive oil, or you could even use regular, like cooking oil, canola oil, whatever you have. Olive oil just gives it a little bit of that Italian flavoring. About 2 tablespoons of olive oil, drizzle that into your flour, and then about a teaspoon of salt also into the flour mix. When I do it in the food processor, I mix those dry ingredients in the food processor, and then once the yeast has completely dissolved and it gets kind of foamy when it's dissolved, then you pour that into the food processor. But assuming you don't have a food processor, you're going to take your bowl with your dry ingredients and your drizzle of olive oil and so forth, and then put in about half of the water. Mix it real good with the yeast. Hopefully it has set 10 or 15 minutes to kind of activate. Also put a little bit of sugar in your water when you're doing the warm water, like a half a teaspoon or something. That just gives the yeast something to kind of feed on and get going. So then you're going to drizzle that into the flour. And I'm sure you've seen what dough looks like. It's not going to be very pretty at first, but it should be pretty sticky. The warm water with the yeast is probably not going to be enough total liquid, and that's fine. Just once you've exhausted that 3/4 of a cup of water with the yeast in it, pour yourself another cup of also warm water, and then a little bit at a time, a couple tablespoons at a time. Put it into your dry mixture until it starts getting kind of goopy and it wants to stick to everything. And then just keep kind of working it and working it. Do not get it too wet. It shouldn't puddle, in the bowl at all. It should hold its shape kind of, okay? So you could probably see some YouTube videos on how other people do it as well. But like I say, this is how I do it. So then you're gonna knead it, which basically that you'll have to look up on YouTube. You're kind of pushing this wad of dough on a floured surface away from you, and then folding it towards you, and then pushing it away from you kind of with the heel of your hand, pushing away and then folding back, and pushing away and folding back. And you keep doing that until it starts to feel a lot more elastic. So it starts out real sticky and kind of gloppy, but it holds its shape. And then when you're towards the end of probably 3 or 4 minutes of kneading, it'll feel real elastic. Then you're going to rest it in a bowl, in a kind of a warmish area. It could be, sometimes I'll turn the oven on to like 150 degrees for 5 minutes and then turn it off, and either put the bowl on top of the stove or in the oven, something like that, until it's doubled in size. And that usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half. So what filled half of your bowl, if if it was that, depending on the size of your bowl, if it would fill half your bowl, now it's going to be kind of touching the saran wrap, because you are going to cover the bowl with saran wrap, so it grows up. And then when it's completely, the hour and a half has passed, it's like touching the top of your cellophane or whatever, you're going to take your hand dipped in flour and kind of punch it down, and then you're going to do that kneading process again. Finally, I'm sure I'm missing a lot. It's a lot easier to show you. If I was making dough, I would show you how I'm doing it, but you're gonna separate it into this recipe will make 2 pizza doughs, and they're not huge, so 2 for the 4 of you would be probably fine. I mean, depending on how much Easton eats these days, I don't know. Sometimes I throw a little more flour in, and a little more water, just to make it a little bigger, but you can't put too much extra stuff in there, because then you'll have to add more yeast, and you kind of want to stick with just 1 packet of yeast if you can. So and then you're going to roll it out. Once it's risen a second time, you're going to roll it out with a rolling pin, or if you didn't have a rolling pin, you can flatten it with your hand. It is going to take longer to do that, and we like it real thin, so a rolling pin is absolutely necessary if you want a thin crust. If you want more of like a medium crust, roll it out to slightly thicker, and then I cook it on a pizza stone, which you have to heat up for a good hour at about 500 degrees, and then when you put the pizza on the pizza stone, it cooks the pizza from the bottom up all the way around. It doesn't cook it more on the outside or more on the inside. And then the other thing that I like to do, I don't know if I haven't seen anybody do it on YouTube, is I get some thin sliced mozzarella from the deli, and I put a layer of that on the dough before I put my wet ingredients, like my canned diced tomatoes, or my sausage, or my mushrooms, or any of the other stuff that I want to put on there. That kind of makes a barrier of mozzarella cheese, almost like plastic wrap in between your wet stuff and your crust. So I don't know, you probably have more questions, let me know. It's, like I say, it's kind of hard to explain unless I'm doing it and seeing what needs to be done. I don't really use a recipe per se. Like I say, I start with about 2.5 to 3 cups of flour, 1 packet of yeast, some salt, and a little bit of sugar, and a couple tablespoons of oil is about it. So good luck. Let me know how it comes out. Oh, and if you don't have the stone, which I'm assuming you won't, you can push it into a like a cookie sheet or a round pizza pan. You would want to make sure that the pans are oiled well, so that dough doesn't stick. But obviously the pizza stone is the best way to do it, because that cooks it from the bottom up. You do get some moisture that kind of hangs in the pan when you cook it in a pan, as opposed to on a dry hot stone. So good luck. Love you guys. Bye.